Koto katoa, ola, and welcome to Sky Stadium in Wellington as the All Blacks and Argentina open their campaigns on New Zealand soil. Off it goes the Bodenberg. Now the chase is on. Derry! Sam Derry on debut. This is a really good drive for the line, and they score! A turnover at line-out time, and then a loose pass. Oh, another loose pass. Error after error. They get it wide, they have a go, they score! Argentina under the posts! And Argentina fully deserving a victory here over the All Blacks in Wellington.
Tēnā koutou katoa, hello and welcome to The Breakdown. Yes, the performance from the All Blacks is under huge scrutiny today. It's been a big 24 hours. You think about the Springboks dominating the Wallabies and Argentina for just the third time. The second time in New Zealand beating the All Blacks. Mills Muliaina, that's Sir John Kerwin. We've got so much to unpack after this weekend. And when you think about what happened last night, the highest number of points conceded, gentlemen, by the All Blacks at home in a test match, 38. We've tried to take the emotion out of it, right? Because clearly there's an element of frustration last night because I suppose we had such high expectations for this group, JK, but we've got to look at this and look at the context of this game, and we have to give all of the credit, you'd have to say, to the Pumas and the way they approached it, delivered, and were good enough to beat the All Blacks again.
Yeah, underestimate them, right? We all underestimate them. We spoke about it last week, and this is a very, very good side. And for me, they actually deserved the victory last night. We let a lot of things go, but they deserved to win because they played a classic game with a few extra things. I think Contaponi has brought something a little bit different, their attack switching sides. You know, Krevy, you think, wow, you know, he's a 38-year-old, but he came on and nailed his role as an impact player, believe it or not, Mills. They were good.
They were very good. I mean, you know, you said it. You know, you shouldn't sort of let your guard down and underestimate this Argentinian side. And even after I think you mentioned the fact if they're crying, we're in big trouble. You said that after their national anthem. They were crying, weren't they? And I sort of brushed it off. I thought, nah, we'll be right. And then all of a sudden, you know, they come out, the style that they actually played, I thought it would be a physical sort of stoppage, sort of, you know, slow kind of style, but it wasn't. You know, they were a little bit expansive too. And
it's 100% you're right, because quite often they've mixed their passion and it's got in the way of their performance. For a long time they've brought that, and I think one of the reasons in some ways we've underestimated them is the fact that what we've done when we've beaten them is we've beaten them comfortably. And so when we get on top of them, all of a sudden we feel comfortable and it's like, well, we're good enough to beat them every time that we play. But you said this straight away. You said all of the emotion, when they're crying, when they're engaged, and they were clearly engaged, the fact there was only 25,000 there at Sky Stadium, they're looking and saying, this is our opportunity. They brought all of that passion, but they delivered, I think, a flawless game plan against the All Blacks, which caught us by surprise.
There's a massive jolly out there, people. There was a massive jolly out there that you cannot ignore, right? So we spoke about it. We need to take them on up front. There wasn't a scrum for 60 minutes, right? So how do you really start them crying? As you take them on in the scrum and you smash them in the scrum, you win a couple of a couple of scrum penalties, you kick down and you start. That just did not happen, and I think that was a huge blow to us, and I think it threw us off our game.
But you mentioned it, the fact that they had some variety in their game, Mills, and they started switching play, and right from the very start, they looked as though they had us under stress, and they came with the mentality to play, to keep the ball in hand, because in the past, what we've watched them do is they've kicked for territory, right? They've gone high. What do? No, they kept the ball in hand, and they managed to chase them and make decisions defensively, and quite often we were the team that was stretched.
That's where I thought it caught the All Blacks by surprise, that they're actually going to run things back, you know, switch play, you know, sort of amongst the forwards, try to get out to the wider sort of channels. But you've also got to try and sustain that. You know, there was an ability for them to start like that and then fall off a little bit, and then for the All Blacks to really sort of ramp things up. The Argentinians didn't. They stuck to that, and they almost sort of reversed the game plan that perhaps the All Blacks were expecting. You know, slow at the start and then sort of try and ramp things up. they slowed things down later on because they'd already sort of implemented the fact, hey, we've actually done what we wanted to do.
Look, and tactically and technically, if you look at that last clip that we just showed, our defensive line slows up because all of a sudden what you've been practicing is not in front of you. You know, we often talk about the All Blacks going out. Yeah, so if you just watch this, look how passive our defensive line is. Geordie's made a decision to come in, right? And all of a sudden, you're seeing stuff, so you're backtracking. And that is a really good way for you to start the game. If you watch again, you know, we're not rushing off the line with confidence because they've thrown something at us. Watch this again, right? So they're coming up, scrambling across, they've got numbers. So that's what you want to do to the opposition early because all of a sudden, all that stuff you practice, get off in your line, smash them over the advantage line, goes out the window. When you talk about the All Blacks, we talk about, you know, sometimes against South Africa or whatever, you've got to do that kicking game to hold up that defensive line. But they did it to us very early.
And that's where you come back to your set piece. No scrum because, you know, they were backpedaling, but there's another chance for the All Blacks to try and get themselves back in the game. You know, let's go to set piece. If there's a scrum, we can dominate physically to try and slow some of that momentum down at the Argentina, but no scrums.
Do you know what's changed significantly for me? And it was the way that they celebrated after the game. Yes, they were happy, they were elated, but it's clearly a different mindset now. There's no doubt about their ability to beat the All Blacks. A number of those players have been there, and then the next generation of young players that are coming in, because they had a number of inexperienced guys playing in this game as well. Guys who hadn't gone through some of that hurt, and hadn't tasted that success, but for them, they believed JK, and they know now. So the big challenge for them is to back it up, because the last time they won here in Christchurch, the second test in that series, they got absolutely walloped. They didn't front up again. If they back it up, all of a sudden, it's another level up again. And we've got to seriously ask ourselves where our game is at. Is that the way you look at this in terms of the next 7 days for Argentina?
Yeah, so I think the Latin stuff that I talk about often, that will be an incredible win. When they won the last time, like national holiday, this time it'll be a bit more tapered. So they will have other goals, and those goals will be, if we're serious top four, then we need to go out next week and we need to compete again. And that will be a mental and an emotional thing with an All Black team that, you know, should be 100% better.
That should be their next target. I mean, you are. I mean, they celebrated, but you almost got the sense, hey, we know we've got a job to do again next week. On the flip side of that, for the All Blacks, I think we've got the players. I 100% think we've got the players. What I don't think we have right now is the clarity in our defensive system, the clarity in terms of, and probably the buy-in in terms of our attacking, our kicking game, and that's probably what's letting us down at the moment.
I want to go back and actually revisit what we spoke to Scott Robertson about after the game, because remember, this is the first time he's taken defeat as the All Blacks head coach. Let's go and listen to some of the quotes.
Kicking game, Razor, was that something that you'd probably have to have a look at again?
Yeah, we had to. What we're training and doing is two different things, but we take that on as coaches.
Did you come into this game with the new rules in mind, and then you get this random thing like no scrums? Does that change what you were thinking on the bench during the game?
Just got to adapt. You know, you've got to adapt whoever's coming on or whatever the context of the game. You have your plans, best laid plans, but it's footy and it's rugby. Things happen. Again, you know, we've got to put it on the field. I've got to own it. The players have got to own it.
You talk about honesty, you talk about all of the things, Mills, about trying to get a performance and a rebound performance, because that's what we are expecting from the All Blacks. We expected that in the second test against England, and we still didn't find a way to get better. Probably the concern for me is the fact that across this, it doesn't appear as though we're any clearer. You talked about maybe some uncertainty in what they're doing. What changes can they make? The one concern for me as well is, not for the first time, talking about the things we're practicing and then executing are two different things. So what do you think the conversations they have today around that are?
Well, today's going to be a crucial day. Not so much in terms of the players, but I think the coaching staff. You know, it's often, you've taken a hit. You know, you've lost a test match that you perhaps wanted to sort of absolutely go out there and dominate. But then there's so many things of the game. The guys obviously aren't sort of implementing the things that they're supposed to be implementing. But what do you focus on? You've got to prioritise things. It's so important that now, JK, and you guys would know that you go and do this, go and do this, go and do that, and by the end of the week, we're in no better place, you know, so it's important they prioritise certain aspects. How many of those aspects? I'm not sure.
Well, for me, there's 4 things that I think that we should be looking at. First is our exit strategy. Now, I've had a really horrible day because I got home and my son-in-law was in the garage having a cycle with an Aussie jersey on. Like that. is just not on. And then I said, why are you wearing that shit in my garage? And he said, I couldn't find my Argentinian jersey. So anyway, I popped upstairs and said to my daughter, you can divorce him anytime you like. But we actually had a discussion when he came upstairs about the exit. I said, our exit strategy. He said, what's an exit strategy? And I said, well, the exit strategy is how do you get out of pressure? How do you get out of your own half? And the thing that the problem that I've got with our exit strategy is our exit strategy at the moment is to play competitive kicks, right? Landing in our own half and try and compete for them. And I thought yesterday and for the whole series so far, that's not working. I mean, you know, TJ won't be happy with this performance of his, but even when we're there, this needs to be competitive, but you're not getting out of your own half. So if you're not competitive, right, then you don't get out of your half, and they are still in your half. So that would be the first thing that I think we look at. We look at our exit strategy and say, does this suit our game, right? And if you're going to have an exit strategy with competitive high balls, do you then look at selection? Who are our best high ball catchers? I personally don't like exit strategies. I don't mind it occasionally where you're competitive, but I don't like exit strategies where you're actually not trying to carve out and get them into their own half. Yeah. That's my personal opinion. The second thing is the attack. Like, when we attack, we actually attacked well. But because we couldn't exit, we didn't get those opportunities. We became quite predictable. So I don't know if we can watch some attack.
Let's talk about some of that, though, because we've got to remember that we were in front for large parts of this Test match. We were 10-0 up, but we did some really nice stuff in attack, like you said, and all of a sudden it was the critical moments that we lost when the game was on the line, Mills. And you talk about exit strategies. You know, I look at some of the attack. On the rarest occasion we got advantage line, particularly in Mark Talia's try, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a little bit of variation in what we're doing, and that's the thing that we haven't seen a lot of.
See those little passes and that little change of angle? We're getting over the advantage line. Only one person to clean out. Really good. Inside ball to Blackadder, over the advantage line again. And then it finishes with them backtracking like we saw them doing to us before, Mark Talia getting off his wing. So when we did those things, we look really, really good. But what happens when you're coming out of that exit, we got a little bit predictable at times. So our front rows were not giving those little passes. So they were getting off the line and smacking us and keeping us in our half.
So in terms of that, when you talk about our game plan, it's exit strategy, though, Mills, and you talk about who's responsible for that, right? So they talk about what they're practising and what they're training. It looks to me that's what they're practising then. Like going to the year, contestable, because it's easy to just kick the ball long. I mean, that's not a hard decision to make if that's what you're training, right?
But that's what I'm talking about. It's dissecting that. If it's the exit strategy, and that's obviously what we think it is, that's got to be a priority, right? What is the end result? What are you looking for in your exit? Why are you kicking? Are you kicking out because you know there's an absolute opportunity that our line out can dominate there and try and win some ball? But are you kicking long? Okay, we're kicking long because we can get a chase on and really connect and force them to kick back. At the moment, it seems like we're under pressure and we're just kicking for the sake of kicking to relieve that pressure, only to have that pressure put on back on us immediately because we haven't kicked well and Argentina are willing to bring the game to us. So as soon as we get that sort of clarity, even if it's contestables, we don't seem to be knowing what we're actually doing in the pitches to be able to get that end result. We're just kicking to try and relieve a little bit of pressure, only to put ourselves back under pressure.
So when I hear Artie and I hear a Razor saying own it, that's what I believe. Sometimes you've got to go, this particular exit strategy doesn't suit us, or we haven't bought into it, right? We're trying hard, but actually it's just not something we should do. And that's where you go, okay, what do we need to do? And we've got to do less. It looks like the players are trying to do a lot. So maybe as coaches, when they say own it, maybe less is more this week and just make it really simple.
I need to talk about that. And you mentioned Augustine Creevy and what they brought off the bench. Tomā Lavanini as well. You're talking about hundreds of Test matches, right? Yeah, let's have a look at what the All Blacks brought off the bench in terms of experience and critical moments to combat that. You've got Asafa Amu, who's played 9. You've got Fletcher Newell, who's played 16. Josh Lord, Wallace Satiti and Cortez Ratama combined have played 7. So your guys talking about guys in critical roles and critical positions, executing lineouts, executing work at the breakdown, and Wallace Satiti responsible for the last penalty in regards to not releasing, and Cortez Ratama, who in his 3rd Test match is probably in one of the most critical decision-making positions. So you start thinking about selection, and you know we made some changes in terms of combinations. The thing you mentioned innovation, and I want to bring this up, like. The one thing that's clearly different about what the All Blacks are doing, and it's not about the players, they've got a huge number of coaches who have got huge responsibilities in terms of selection. And when you start thinking about that, that's different. I'm not sure we've seen that from another team where they've been assigned positions. There's a huge number of, like I say, coaches, and they've got an area they have to focus on. And is the danger there, and this is the area I'm looking at, JK and Mills, of there's a lot of information, there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of guys feeding that through. Is that a concern, the fact that all of a sudden, do we look as though we're maybe just a little bit confused about what we're trying to do?
Yeah, I think it seems that way. It almost sort of comes across the fact that they're not on the same page, right? They haven't quite decided on, there was a lot of talk about this whole new style that they're going to play on attack. I'm not worried too much about the attack because you've seen it. We've just showed a little bit of that, JK. I'm worried about the fact that when the heat gets on, we almost revert back to what we're comfortable about. And that almost comes across as, hey, well, I'm not quite sure about this, all this sort of information, all these sort of different variations. And on the other side of that too, have we actually settled on that? It's all right having these coaches, but they've got to discuss it. But at the end of the day, they've got to actually go in there with no uncertainty that this might work or this might not work.
Yeah, look, and I just want to go back to your point, Goldie, because I'm not worried about those kids coming on. I think we're rebuilding. That we've got a young team, so I'm actually not worried about that, mate. What my fourth point, and I'll come back to my third point afterwards, was a bit about what you're talking about. What are the learnings for Ardy, Geordie, right? Possibly Bowden, Damien, and Cody yesterday, because whether you like it or not, they've been in the leadership group, but they haven't been the leaders, right? So that last line out, if Sam Whitelock was there, he would have had the line out or the three options. We would have won that line out. In the end, what happened was misconfusion, and we lose the line out at the back, right? In a critical moment. Like the line out was really good, besides that one, when we needed to win that one to win the game, right? That is a leadership thing. So the leadership now needs to go away this week and go, okay, do we need to have a really serious conversation with the coaches because we're doing too much, we're a bit confused? And what did we learn? What should we have done in that last line out? How should we have gone the last, 15 minutes? How should we have managed it? Did we manage it properly or we didn't have enough awareness? And I think they're good things, right? They're really, really good things. I think what you're talking about is I failed as a coach because I got pig-headed at times and didn't change quick enough. When these coaches need to sit back and go, some of the stuff's not working. I like an external selector. I think Foxy was fantastic because sometimes he'd stay home all week and on a night like that, he'd come in today and go, this is what I saw and this is what we should be doing, So some of the innovation, you've got to go, didn't work, move on. Or maybe not.
Yeah, but I'm happy for that to play out because it's new, it's fresh.
Yeah.
Like you say, we are in a rebuilding phase. You have to accept that when you are giving guys opportunities. I want to do a big shout out though, and we talked about it on the night to Angus Gardner, because I'm sure the TMO was doing everything he possibly could to bring a yellow card into the game for this collision, and common sense prevailed because an experienced and talented referee made the right decision. Just listen here.
Boys, for me, the blue player is going into the black player. Yeah, and he takes him in the head. I'm not seeing anything there, guys. He's receiving that player. Are you?
Yes, we know the collision is part of the game. Yes, when you look at those, there may have been, that's head on chest, but it's leading player. There's nothing that you could say that Ethan Blackadder could have done, but it's just, I just love the fact he handled it so well. He didn't get talked into something. No. He just looked at the footage and he made the right decision. I think that to me is massive and critical for our game.
Totally agree. And this comes to my last point of my 4 points that we need to talk about this week. The one thing that you can control as a player is you. And I think the individual tackle, every player in that All Blacks needs to go, I'm wearing this jersey this week, no one's going to get past me. Because then you've got something really to focus on. So this week, doesn't matter what happens, one-on-one tackle, I'm really going to nail it because you can control it and it's easy to control and you can bring your passion through that.
38 points for the All Blacks at home. That's a record. And to your point, so that's clearly ill-discipline, inaccuracy, presenting them with opportunities to score points. They kicked their goals, and when they got opportunities to score tries, they were impressive. We have to talk about this record at Sky Stadium. 25,000, that was all. It wasn't a sellout in Wellington. If you look at what has happened since 2017, we've started with the Lions. Yeah, we know there's some unusual circumstances. Was this the right place to play this test match? They've got a test match against the Wallabies coming up. Would you be disappointed? You know, I've heard, you know, we didn't lose any money on the test match. Well, that's not the point. It should be, you're giving everyone an opportunity to go and watch the All Blacks. 2 test matches in the same city, and financial times are tough, JK. I just look at this and go, you know what, was this the right place to play Argentina? And, you know, there were some large sections of this stadium that weren't full, and
yeah,
I'm not convinced.
I think it's dumb from a strategy point of view. That should have been played in Taranaki. Haven't they just opened
Hamilton?
Or Hamilton. You know, Hamilton's had a few. Taranaki, I think the stadium's just opened.
Half of the corporate boxes were empty.
Yeah, and look, times are really tough out there, you know. So people can't afford to be going to 2 test matches. And I think also it felt flat to me, and it felt flat to me because there's only half the crowd in. And you need that crowd behind you when you're playing at home. That's why you play at home. So I think that was unfortunate, and something that you know, I don't think it's got anything to do with the team, but certainly, you know, Mark Robinson and the strategy team need to go, okay, we've learnt on that. What are we going to do moving forward? Yeah,
and to set the tone too. We underestimated the Argentinians. So, I mean, when you look at it, 2 test matches, you're going to go for the Wallabies one, right? And hard times, and of course you're going to go and pick that over the others and spend that money there. So I think it was. I think they needed to really have that somewhere else, at Hamilton, you know, and sort of, you know, get the rest of the country in behind it.
And heaps of gold medals compared to, it's our best ever Olympics, right? And best ever since 1984. So how good is that? But also how close some of our other athletes got, you know? So for me it was, I just loved it. I'll be sad when it finishes. I just love watching elite sport. You know, I think it's just one of the greatest things for me.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, it's reminiscent when you, as a youngster, was getting up and watching to the Olympics, wasn't it? So fantastic stuff for our Olympians.
Yep, congratulations to everyone. What I would say is, though, if it was trouble for us here, there's trouble in Australia, because the Springboks were awesome against the Wallabies at Suncorp Stadium, and a sold-out stadium it was there as well. After the break, we're going to catch up with Wallaby legend Tim Horan.
The Springboks and Wallabies get set to clash, and they are driving hard with purpose at pace, and I think it might be Khaleesi, is it? Runner. Advantage over for the knock. Okay. Can Australia hold firm once more? Detroit at pace. Detroit is over. It goes in the direction of Curly Aronson. With the wicked feet. It was a blur. Just keep thundering forward, and it's Quagga Smith on the board. Near side is the other whippet. LaRue heads in his direction out. Krill straightening up. Krill gets through. Jesse Krill looking for LaRue. It goes to Aronson. They're running hot. They're running real hot. Burner digging for it. Wilson fires it out the back, right across the line.
The Springbok team superb here this afternoon.
No, my hooky, my welcome back to the breakdown. Yes, a sold-out Suncorp Stadium enjoyed what was a remarkable performance from the Springboks, absolutely dominating Australia, 33-7. And if you think about that performance in the context of what we've just been through here in New Zealand, we've got questions here across the Tasman. They've got questions there as well. And talk about reality checks, I think they got one in Australia. Let's get some answers, if we possibly can, from one of our friends of the show. There he is, Tim Horan. He's been out for a walk, I hear, today. He's probably had time to think about it. Timmy, all right, we're talking reality check here in New Zealand. What are you talking in Australia after that demolition that the Springboks did over the Wallabies?
Well, I think first of all, thanks for the welcome on the show, boys. And it was an incredible game yesterday. Sold out Suncorp Stadium, 52,500 people. And who would have thought after the disaster of Rugby World Cup that many people would turn out, sold out stadium. I reckon about half of the stadium were Springbok supporters that come from everywhere, green jerseys to see their world champion team. And unfortunately for the Wallabies, there wasn't too many positives to come out of the game. It took them 75 minutes to score a point. That was the try to Hunter Paisami late in the game. But the Springboks, I think you've got to sit back and, boys, when you're on the broadcast, you see the way that the Springboks performed. You've got to sit back and go, wow, they are the #1 team in the world. And I actually think they're probably a bit better than what they were last year.
Timmy, I don't know if you've got like kangaroo caught in the headlights. We say possum caught in the headlights over here. But that's what it looked like. It didn't look like the Australian team was actually ready for the intensity of really what the forward pack brings in particular. Did you feel that they maybe weren't mentally ready for what you need to be to play the Springboks?
JK, I think they were mentally ready and the side was up for it. No Taniela Tupou, no Fraser McWright probably hurt us, but I think they were mentally ready. But the physicality that the Springboks bring to test matches now with the size and how they dominated the breakdown. Tony Brown had a really good influence into the game, I thought, as assistant coach. There was a couple of different plays. One of those lineouts, there was the first scrum of the match. They had their winger put the ball in at scrum half, and then Reinach, the scrum half, went out into the centres. So just a few variations from players, a coaching staff like Tony Brown probably confused the Wallabies, but it was out and out a power game from this Springbok team. And then they got width in their game throughout the whole 80 minutes, whereas the Wallabies, they were really bunched. They were sending 4 to 5 to sometimes 6 players to the breakdown to get the ball out, and then they just had no width in their game. So that's what cost the Wallabies. And I think that first 20 minutes we hardly had any of the ball, and we did 2 chip kicks away, lost those possessions. Rob Valentini lost the ball midfield. Those 3 turnovers in that first 20 minutes really cost the Wallabies.
To me, a lot of hype and energy around, obviously, Joe Schmidt's involvement and off the backing of the Wells sort of victories. I mean, how significant is this setback going to be for this team? I mean, the score is, significant, but how significant in terms of the camp and the mental state of these guys leading into next week's test?
Yeah, I think, Mills, what it will show Joe Schmidt and the Wallaby team, they had this game plan with what they wanted to keep the ball in play, and they wanted to try and move the big forwards around of the Springbok team to tire them out. But you say that's one thing doing that, but then you've got another 6 forwards to come off the bench, and they're fresh forwards. And the kicking game early from the Wallabies wasn't very good. I think when you've got and we've been in big test matches where plan A is just not working. They had 25% possession that first 20 minutes, the Wallabies. Then you get to a line out at halfway, your ball, and you kick the first possession, you get a chance to try and get past 7+ phases. You kick it away in the first phase. So I think Joe Smith's the style of the game. He's just got to reassess how the Wallabies should play the game. Open, expansive style of rugby. Yes, you do have to kick and kick tactically really well. But I think we really need to have a look at our game and what's going to suit the Wallaby players to the style of game we need to play. We need to play with some width, and we didn't have that yesterday.
So, Tim, then are there some personnel that you'll welcome back or selection changes you might make to this group, knowing that you need to make a difference in terms of tactical appreciation for the opposition? Do you see some guys that maybe make a difference, and who would you include?
Yeah, I think Marika Koroibete, he'll come back into the team. He should start. He was close to being in the squad this week. I saw him on the sideline. He's fit. He just needed to get a bit more of a feel of this Wallaby team over the last week in the squad. Taniela Tupou, I don't think will be right. He lost his father last week. He was at the ground yesterday. I think he's going back home for the funeral this week, so unlikely for him to probably be in Perth. Filippo Dungunu, he's out. He's got a fracture in his leg. Nick Frost, Jeremy Williams, they're going to miss for head knocks as well. So it's going to be tough for the Wallabies to rebuild and get something out of Perth. I think that, there was half the crowd at Suncorp Stadium were Springboks. There's going to be a few more in Perth. So it's a challenge for Joe Schmidt to try and work this style out and how to get outside of the rush-up defence from Jesse Creel in that 13 channel.
Timmy, is there a bigger political question here? Are we actually missing the South African teams in Super Rugby to prepare us for that different style?
I think, JK, I think we are. I think they've gone to that Northern Hemisphere and they've got better. I think their forward pack, they're more dominant. They were getting a lot of offloads. Well, you talk about the physical and you talk about, how good they are and bending the defensive line, but they're getting offloads away all the time. And Sia Khaleesi was superb, 33 years of age, still got it. I don't think he's unfit. I think he looks pretty sharp, and they're a wonderful team. I think yesterday I wanted to sit back and enjoy how good they are, and I think they're better than they were and more expansive than they were at Rugby World Cup. So they're going to be very hard to beat in this Rugby Championship.
That's got to be hard for you to say, as a former Wallaby, to sit back and watch the Springboks run over top of your side, which we had the difficulty of watching that at Sky Stadium in Wellington last night. Thanks very much for joining us, mate. Hopefully we have better luck and better fortune next weekend. Always appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks, guys. Good luck. Hopefully we can turn it all around next week.
Well, you think about the context of that performance, and I think he's right. You have to be in awe of what the Springboks brought in that game, JK. We watched it before we watched the Argentina and the All Blacks do battle, but they seem to be on a different level right now. And Peter Steph Toy can go into lock. He was playing lock for them in terms of what they were offering, dominant up front, all the things that they were good at, we saw once again, but we did see some variation.
Yeah, and look, I think you've got to say that the coaching staff, Rusty is an innovator. I mean, you throw to the back pod, you throw it to the front pod that's in the air, then you maul for a try. I mean, that you're taking huge risks at Test match level. They actually look a little bit fitter, if that makes sense. They look like they've done a lot more running because they want to play different. Watch this. Like, what is that? That's a high risk in Test match when you think about it. When sometimes all you want to do is when you line out. So Rusty was the guy that brought in the different, the different traffic-like systems. He's brought in this bomb squad. So he's a coach that's gone out and gone, okay, I've looked at the World Cup. Who's one of the best attacking coaches in the world? Oh, let's go and get Tony Brown, right? And he's brought him into the environment. They've also got a really solid team, right? Who's retired?
But this
from
is
that Springbok.
But let's talk about that whole Super Rugby concept then you're talking about, because they've gone to the Northern Hemisphere, right, Mills? The fact that where they're playing, the competition that they have, clearly we're trying to prepare ourselves to play against them. There are aspects of that. We don't travel as far. We're not in situations where it's uncomfortable. We're pretty quick to get home to our beds. I mean, is that not helping the Springboks because the Wallabies and the All Blacks don't get that exposure to them?
Oh, you're not exposed to that sort of style either. And I think, we all agree, right, what Timmy sort of mentioned. The Springboks have gotten better by going up north. And that's probably the worrying sign is how do we down here, like you look at that display there against the Australian, you're thinking, off the back of us losing as well, you're thinking, man, how do we bridge the gap? You're not thinking about going in and almost confident that you can tip them over. You're going, how do you actually combat this team that are innovative, they're fitter, they're more expansive, and they're physical?
I'm sorry to take this political, guys, but for the last 3 or 4 years, Sanzar's been a little bit disjointed. And we've been trying to make it up in the boardroom instead of actually going, what is the best competition? Our competition has changed for the last 5 years, right? It's no secret that South Africa got annoyed with Sanzar and decided to leave. But from a high performance point of view, I think mentally it's harder up north. You have more games. Your games are, sometimes they finish 10-9, right? And you get used to a different style of rugby. If you balance that with the amazing athletes that are in South Africa, and with a base of players where you go, wow, we're on this journey, we can be the greatest team ever, it looks like they've found another gear and they want to take their game to another level.
So politically then, when you talk about that, if you're sitting there and you've been annoyed about Sanzar and you're South Africa and you've gotten better on the field, why would they want to come back?
They won't.
Well, Argentina is very much the same, right? If you think about the number of players that they have playing in the Northern Hemisphere, and they've come down to New Zealand, and they clearly don't fear playing the All Blacks in New Zealand now, and so they've got that experience. They had quite a lot of it from the Jaguares when they were in Super Rugby, but they've gone away and become successful. So I get all of that. Right now, the Springboks just have to be the favourites to win the title now, given what's just happened to the All Blacks. They're playing the All Blacks in South Africa. Look, it took everything we had last year in the Rugby World Cup, given the fact we're down to 14 men. I just look at the way they're playing. Look, you talk about innovations. We've talked about Tony Brown. He had, I think, Cheslin Colby on the wing. He's putting the ball in the scrum so they could move Cobus Reinach around off a set piece. I mean, those are things that, we were talking about whether we would change things. They're looking at the game differently, and they're giving one of the best attack coaches have to say, Mills and Tony Brown, the licence to do things like this. And if you're a defensive team, all of a sudden it's got you thinking. I mean, I can't be more impressed with what they're doing right now.
But there's also the fact that they all believe in what they're actually doing. Because there's one thing, okay, and they're very clear. There's one thing, they're trying to be innovative and go out there and, hey, this is what we're going to do. But to then go and implement it like they are doing, I mean, that just goes to show the environment as well. I mean, you've spoken about how motivational, Russie is, but they're all on the same page.
I don't agree. I agree with you, Mills. I don't agree with you, Goldie.
About time.
Because there is one thing that is fundamental. We won 2 World Cups in a row, and the coaching staff stayed. Russie and his staff have stayed. He's got the basis of a team. So the honeymoon is over. For Razor, the honeymoon's over for Joe. But they're getting to know these players. They're getting to know their coaching system. Same with Joe Smith. He's gone over there, and if we had a bit more time with Tim, I'm saying, do you have the depth, So whereas this South African team, but this is not over yet, people. It's not over.
I get that.
And if we can actually learn from last night, and if Australia, the thing that worries me the most is those incredible athletes that they have in South Africa. And I always felt, and I felt last year, if we had have come out in the second half and just run, I think we would have run off the feet. But they look like fitter. So I think Russie would have gone away and go, okay, what do I do now? Where can we get better? We're world champions, where can we get better?
What I can say is I was incredibly impressed, and we can hear the atmosphere there, Mills. Yeah. The fact that, we've talked about the disappointment of not being able to sell at a stadium, but rugby in Australia, after Joe Smith gets 3 wins, the Springboks coming to town, I think in some ways this has been a celebration up in Brisbane, and they got to see the #1 team, the World Cup winning squad, come and deliver. And I think they are a show to watch right now.
Oh, they are. And I think and a great place to go to Perth as well, to again showcase. I know there's a lot of South Africans here, but why not fill another stadium in Perth to get the support behind them? I mean, even over in the All Blacks in San Diego, there were Springbok supporters over there. It goes to show, how popular they actually are, the world champs right now.
Next week is all I'm going to say. We need to see an incredible improvement from the Australian team. Otherwise, we are all under some serious threat from a very good side, right? So I thought they were a kangaroo in the headlights. They need to come out next week and really at least compete. And so do we. And then after that, I'm going to go, wow. Because I didn't see either All Blacks or the Wallabies yesterday that could compete with this side today. But hopefully I'm sitting here next week and going, wow, that was a great, amazing performance. And, well, the Australians tipped them up and we got 5 points and she's all on.
Jonah was, and still is, as a player, was probably the biggest impact and the most recognition globally ever in the game.
Lomu!
Well, he became the first global superstar of rugby. What he did in that '95 World Cup will never leave us.
This man just 2 years ago was playing schoolboy rugby.
Jonah simply was the most dangerous rugby player, I think, that's played the game.
Who touches the ball, things happen.
Jonah could do things on the field that no one had seen before. When you're watching it happen in front of you, it's the greatest sight.
Lomu, heading for 4. That's the most brilliant quartet of tries you'd ever wish to see.
So I remember watching him at the start of his career. He played number 8 for New Zealand schools. Comes back to Jonah at number 8 and he scores from the halfway from number 8. And you sort of thought, wow, we've got a young superstar coming through.
Jonah Lomu, what promise there is there.
Now, I'd already been told about how great this kid was, and he was in number 8. And we watched him, Earl and I, and we talked about it. And then almost together we said, how would he go on the wing? If we were good enough to develop him as a wing, then he could be something the world's never seen. And fortunately, that's the way it turned out.
But then all of a sudden, the World Cup, it was like a steamroller, like he played. It just started building up momentum. We want to see this guy play. What's he capable of? And he's doing things and running over people and through people and some of the best players in the world. It was exciting. It was dramatic.
Jonah Lomu is the only global superstar we'll ever have in rugby. There hasn't been one since. You can go to America or go to Brazil and they know who Jonah Lomu is. But he did that in the space of 5 games, literally 5 games.
you are 118 kilos and you're running this fast, right? Then you try and tackle that, that's like just trying to tackle a train.
What I loved about Jonah, he had some frailties in the game. They were never things that we put a lot of effort into. All I wanted him to do really was get better at what he was good at, because he was the best in the world at evasion. So if you have a look at a lot of those ball carries, they've normally got a step in them, so he's hitting the weak side of a tackler. It's because of that ability to offset people, hit a weak side, which then allowed him to use his explosive speed and his size.
And the thing about him was he scored tries that no one else would ever score.
Randall pops up to Lomu. Here we go. Can he make it? You betcha. You betcha. Jonathan.
I always think, just what would he have been had he ever been medically really fit? We saw a colossus as he was. I don't think we have any idea what he might have been. I think he might have been, well, he is a standout of the game, but I think he could have even achieved greater things than we saw. I mean, that's how good he was.
Bundling them off, and the big man is over to his second try.
It was traumatic at the end, you know. It was such a remarkable career that was obviously had its challenges, but always when the biggest stage came along, and that's a Rugby World Cup, he delivered.
That's what is incredible about him. He remains today a phenomenon.
Almost, you'd have to say, probably the biggest game changer ever. And Game Changers is brought to you by Bundaberg Ginger Beer. Look, we've all got a story. Everyone's got a Jonah Lomu story, JK. In different generations we are. For you, and what he was and the challenge, and I'm pretty sure that's why you went to rugby league, is because he was around, made life very difficult for all of us from time to time.
So towards the end of my career, I told the manager that I didn't want a room with forwards. You know, I didn't want a room with the buffheads because they messy and you know, they go to the toilet and leave the door open, stuff like that. Anyway, this massive guy walks in and I said, mate, buffhead's down the hall, you know? And he said, oh, nah, bro, because we didn't use bro back then. Oh, nah, bro, I'm playing the backs. Oh, shit. Anyway, went out. We did testing. We didn't do testing much back then. He won the 60, you know, he won the 80-metre sprint, and we're walking back and he said, oh, bro. And I didn't know he was talking to me because we used to use mate. And I said, oh, me, yeah. He said, what's that? And I said, oh, that's a buffhead's jump pole. You know how the locks used to jump those basketball things? And there was 1 and 2 left, and he walked under it and jumped and hit 1 and 2. So when we get back to the room, he takes his shirt off, you know, and he's just, my turtle had rolled over, obviously, and he's just like, cut. And I went, bro, because I'm a quick learner, I said, bro, what do you weigh? He said, 118 kilos. And I rang the Warriors, I'm coming. But taken too quick, amazing man, saw the growth of him as a person, had a lot to deal with, Mills, but just a beautiful man at heart.
Beautiful, and a superstar, but so generous with his time. I had the pleasure of sort of playing in the sevens side with him, obviously at the World Cup, and the sort of the things that he sort of produced. Always generous with his time, but also just a youngster. He just seemed so young. He was always a character. He wasn't so serious. He didn't take life too serious, but yeah, wonderful man.
There was some, in some ways, there was some sadness because I got to see Jonah go through a lot of difficult challenges and how quickly the spotlight came on him. For, like you say, still a pretty immature guy who all of a sudden was on the biggest stage, and everyone did their very best to help him, but he did things that were remarkable. And, you know, I had the privilege of rooming with him a few times, but there are challenges that come with that as well, because he didn't like to sleep at night, so the TV was always on, and you never sort of really told Jonah what to do. But you talk about generous. I borrowed his car one time, and those are the times where he had the boom boxes in the back, and he didn't tell me the volume that he normally has the decibels up to. I almost missed a test batch with a blown eardrum because I turned the car on and then the whole car started vibrating, started doing the whole bouncing up and down, couldn't stop. Didn't borrow his car very often. And then another time, I remember we were on a bus trip and we stopped for a restroom break, and he snuck into a local warehouse, and he came back and he snuck onto the bus all those massive bags of lollies, you know, huge. We're talking, you know, probably $100 worth. He was generous with everything, and he just started dishing them out on the nutritionists at the time used to turn around and go, nah, we're all good. So and McDonald's, records, legendary consumption of McDonald's when you went there, because he always, it's like he had a point to prove. I'm not sure who to, but just to everyone is the fact that I can consume the most. So there was always, he was the biggest life, you know, but I loved playing with him. I played at secondary schools with him as well, you know. But there was always, as much as I loved playing with him, he just gave you nightmares knowing you had to play against him, you know, and you always wondered about when it was time that you'd have to make a tackle and you knew you were going to be on the end of... this is what he did to you. You knew this was coming, Mills, and you couldn't stop it.
No, you couldn't, man. I mean, being on the opposite side of him, you're thinking, oh, far out, I might go on the other wing and start defending sort of there. But you talk about how generous he was in the consumption of McDonald's. He actually took myself and Amasio Valance in Wellington, the Wellington Sevens, to KFC. And it was free. But unfortunately enough for us, Gordon Titchens found out about that, and Jonah got back to Super Rugby, and we ended up on the line doing extra shuttles for that. But such a generous person.
Yeah, well, the way I used to defend him is we had two defensive patterns when I played. It was man on or drift, and drift was you drift off your player. Trouble is on the wing. I called drift and drifted onto the touch judge.
Touch judge, yeah.
Let him go, son.
Yeah, I used to just try and run down from behind, you know, because I was fast enough to do that, you know. But we used to. It was when you're playing against them, you actually had your own defensive system to run them down. Look, miss the big man, but he was. If you're talking about a game changer, he's one of the very best. If you're talking about the best, well, this is a book you need to read because this is Sam Whitelock's book. We've got a couple of these to give away, and what you do know is he's going to be honest. And if you read a couple of excerpts about this, then, and you've seen it in the paper, you need to get this, and you'll find out what it was like for him, one of our greatest ever. How do you win that? Well, what you do is you tell us, and you email the breakdown.co.nz with us. If you email us, we will, it's on the bottom there. Is it on the bottom there? We're going to show that to you. Who was his first locking partner when he came off the bench on debut? It's not a quiz, it's not that quiz thing, JK, because you're not good at that.
No.
Have you got any idea?
No.
No, you got no idea. All right. That's your opportunity to win a couple of these books. A fantastic read. All right, next as well. Have you heard of Sports Airs? Remember those? You remember Sports Airs, guys?
Yeah.
OK, we've got something better. We've got something better, and this is called Live Feed. This is your opportunity to hear the game, our commentary live on at the stadium. So what you have to do, and there's no app required, OK? It couldn't be simpler. All you have to do is scan the QR code on the big screen at the ground or visit allblacks.livefeed.fm from within the stadium. So you will hear, OK, you'll hear our commentary team, or you can hear the referee and the TMO. All you got to do is bring your old headphones, pure and simple, whether it's your iPod phones, whatever it might be, put those in and you can hear the commentary. So stoked that is now available to you. Big weekend, expectations quickly at Eden Park.
Yeah, sort those things out. Exit, I think, do
the big
what
four.
we do well.
They got the big four.
Yeah, do what we do well.
Okay.
Take your black jersey and turn it into your personal contribution back to the game and your defence, and the leadership's learned and win it.
I'm confident we'll turn it around. I mean, I think we've got the players to be able to do it. It's going to be a tough week, but I think we kind of needed this, you know. I mean, I said at the beginning of the season, 9 games, man, I'll be happy with.
Let's bring it on. Thanks for joining us on The Breakdown. Look forward to seeing you in 7 days' time, maybe with a different result. I'm hoping so.